Islam does not really teach these things, that Islam has been hijacked by a tiny minority of extremists who teach violence in its name, but that the vast majority of peaceful Muslims, who undeniably exist, do not believe in the same Islam that Osama bin Laden and the Taliban believe in, and that therefore we can depend upon them as reliable allies, and they will help us to fight against these people who are perverting their religion. Well, it didn't work. And I submit to you that we could have known that it wouldn't work. We could have known from the beginning and not wasted all those billions and essentially financed the efforts of our enemies if we had known what they believed. Now this is, of course, venturing into forbidden territory. It is criticizing someone's religion. It is Islamophobic. It is hateful. It is bigoted. It's just mean. But if you read the Koran, which I happen to have with me, then you will find, I think, what are some clues to the beliefs, if not of Musharraf himself, who was a secular-minded fellow, for the most part, but certainly of the elements of the Pakistani High Command that were directly responsible for the funneling of the money to the terrorists. Now, imagine if you are a pious Muslim, and Pakistan, you might know, is full of pious Muslims. So this is not a stretch. And you believe that this is the perfect and eternal book that existed forever in paradise with Allah and was transmitted in perfect form through the angel Gabriel to Muhammad. And now here it is. It's the supreme guidance for human behavior. And you just heard, imagine you're one of these Pakistani generals, and you just heard that Musharraf agreed to take Bush's money, American money, to fight the terrorists. And so it's time for prayers, and you go, and you know, in Islamic prayer 5 times a day, there's a part of it where you have to recite a portion of the Quran. It doesn't have to be, it's not obviously the same one all the time. You can pick, in some circumstances, you just pick one that you are fond of. So imagine that this general that we have in mind, this hypothetical general, he opens up the Quran, or he does it from memory, since in Pakistani schools you learn to memorize the Quran, and he recites, "Believers, do not take Jews and Christians for your allies. They are the allies of each other. And among you who take them for allies shall be regarded as one of them," which is not a good thing in the Islamic scheme of things. Now, as far as the United States is concerned, we have the non-establishment of religion, which is an extraordinarily wise provision because it allows for people who differ in conscience, differ in conviction on fundamental ideas of the truth and the nature of reality to coexist peacefully in harmony with one another. But because the majority of Americans are Christians in the Islamic world, America is a Christian nation. And if you are an atheist and you grew up in a Christian family, as far as most Muslims are concerned, you might meet from the Middle East or from Pakistan, you're a Christian. It's not a matter really of creed or belief or conviction. It's a matter of a kind of ethnic identity. It's your deen, your religion in the Islamic world is part of who you are. As much as you can't change being French. If you're French, you'll always be French. You can't convert to German, much as Hitler might have tried. And if you are a Muslim, of course it's forbidden to convert to Christianity, but it's also kind of seen as preposterous, that it can't really happen. It's like changing your nationality, changing your DNA. It's part of who you are. So anyway, do not take Jews and Christians for your allies. They are the allies of one another. Okay, so in the first place, maybe you are thinking, this program is not a good idea, that we're taking this money from the infidels. And you go to another verse, and you get to, 120, not 210. Dyslexia of the brain. Anyway, chapter 2, verse 120. Never will the Jews be pleased with you, nor the Christians, until you follow their way. And so here come the Americans with all this money and say, help us fight the terrorists. And there are many Islamic imams all around the world who have encountered American aid in various forms, and they have spoken about exactly this thing. Regard it with suspicion. Regard it with reserve. Take it, they tell their people, but do not enter into some sort of an alliance with these people. All they want to do is ultimately convert you to Christianity or Judaism. They do not have your best interests at heart. They want to destroy your religion and culture. So there's two strikes. They better not take the money, right? And so maybe you're this Pakistani general and you're just about to go in to see Musharraf and tell him, look, we really shouldn't take this money at all because it puts us on the wrong side of God, which is not a trivial thing if you're a believer. Another verse, though. The believers may not take the unbelievers for their allies in preference to the believers. The believers, the Muslims, may not take the unbelievers, non-Muslims, for their allies in preference to the believers. Whoever does this has nothing to do with Allah. That's a very serious thing. It has nothing to do with Allah. Unless he does so in order to protect himself from their wrongdoing. Unless he does so in order to protect himself from their wrongdoing. What does that mean? Well, don't take my word for it. I have this very nice Koran with me. I picked this up in London. A few weeks ago I was in London and I went on a tour, a mosque tour. I know that's not what you usually do in London, go see the mosques, but that's my idea of fun. And I was at the Finsbury Park Mosque, which you may have heard of. A few years back, it was the center of activities for Abu Hamza al-Masri, who is known as Captain Hook. He's the fellow, the jihad terrorist. He has a hook for a hand, and he's got one of his eyes poked out. He's a very scary-looking guy. And he was preaching jihad and hatred and warfare against non-Muslims in this Finsbury Park Mosque. But now he's in prison. And so I went into the Finsbury Park Mosque, and they were very happy to see me. That might surprise you, but they didn't know who I was. And they were very happy that an unbeliever was coming in, full court press, trying to convert me, gave me this very nice Quran. And I said, I hear there was some trouble here a few years back, eh, guys? Gosh, what happened? And he said, yeah, there were some bad people here, and they were doing bad things, but now it's all over. And now we are peaceful, and we love England, and so on and so on. And he gave me this peaceful and moderate Quran. Now, this peaceful and moderate Quran is a very nice English edition with commentary by Sayyid Abdullah Maududi, who was a Pakistani jihad theorist of the 20th century. Very important figure. If you go to an Islamic bookstore in this area, and I'm sure there are plenty, then you will find Maududi's writings. If you go to islamicbookstore.com online, you will find Maududi. Very internationally influential theorist of political Islam. And Maududi explains this verse. Remember, we're talking about the verse that says, the believers may not take the unbelievers for their allies in preference to the believers. Whoever does this has nothing to do with Allah, unless he does so in order to protect himself from their wrongdoing. So how does Maududi, internationally renowned Islamic authority, explain that passage? He says, this means that it is lawful for a believer, helpless in the grip of the enemies of Islam, and in imminent danger of severe wrong and persecution, to keep his faith concealed, and to behave in such a manner as to create the impression that he is on the same side as his enemies. Did you hear that? Should I read that again? To create the impression that he is on the same side as his enemies. Now, Maududi did not invent that idea. That's the commonplace mainstream understanding of that passage. And it is a deeply rooted idea in Islam that under pressure, as Musharraf undoubtedly was when 9/11 happened, then you can pretend to be on the side of your enemies. But the pretense was clear. Now you might say, well, you're just proof texting. You're hypothetical here. This is not a real general. You're not really showing us that anybody reads this stuff and takes it seriously. Well, very well then. But it does explain the available facts in a way that Obama's construction does not. It does explain why it is that they took our money for so long and yet betrayed us and gave it to the people they were supposed to be using it to fight against. And it certainly is true that the book is taken very seriously in the Islamic world.